Sunday. It's a lovely day today. It's meant to be horrible, but it's turned out okay. Having extra light makes all of this adjustment a lot easier. So this morning I have taken the petrol tank off, feeding it from a can. This is actually the can I used for the Riley. It's not a fuel problem, I know that. Well, there is a fuel problem, but we'll get to that in a second. I've checked it for leaks. One thing I was doing wrong is I hadn't clipped the little rubber boots properly onto the top of the carbs. That made a difference. I have replaced everything I can easily replace. So I replaced the throttle stop screws, even though they don't really do anything. The inside one was a bit mangled, and the reason for that is because it's a slotted screw and there's no way you can get a screwdriver square onto it because of where it is. It's like completely blocked. So you end up mangling the head of that screw. Made sure that these little takeoffs were tight because one of them had backed out a little bit. I might knurl them so you can really screw them in tight, just to make sure there's no air leak there, because that would be air leaking straight in. You'll never get it to work properly then. But again, I've sprayed around there. There's no obvious vacuum leaks. This is set up again. I did the trick with the little piece of clear hose that someone suggested. That was a really good idea. So what you do is you hook this onto the carb overflow, which is down here, or the drain rather, and then you arrange this as a sort of U-tube, and then you open the little drain valve, the little drain screw, and this will float up, or the fluid will fill the level that it's at in here. It'll equalize, of course, and that seems correct. It's sort of just near this brake line, which is correct. So I don't think it's a fuel float problem. When I did set the floats, I was really careful about that because I knew you want to get that right, otherwise you have to take the carbs off to adjust it. I didn't want to do that. My fuel leakage problem, I tightened up this corner screw and it stripped the thread. I think the thread was already mostly gone, but when I pulled the screw out, it had bits of aluminium stuck to it. So I have put through basically a nut and a bolt, and I've tightened that up and it's still leaking. So I think maybe the O-ring that's in between these is not sitting correctly. Either that or one of these is now cracked. Hopefully it's not that. But I can't find any air leaks. The behavior is very strange. One, it's quite hard to start. And then the problem is what I was having before, which is you can get it to idle, but it idles way too high. If you've got the choke on, it idles at the correct point. But even if you sit it and leave it idling, it'll just idle away quite happily for a bit, and then it just dies. I don't understand that. Let's see if we can get it to start. Of course, it never wants to. Oh, there we go. Switch. Never wants to start when I film it. I did replace the pilot needles out of my spares kit. These were the old ones. They look exactly the same. It's already got the new O-rings in there, but replace those. Seems to have helped a little bit. The problem is all of these improvements are so minor, it's hard to know if they've actually done anything or if I'm just imagining it. I don't think it's worth taking them apart to replace the jets. Maybe to replace that jet, but the needle isn't going to have any impact on it until the throttle's open, really. And my problem is I can't get it to idle correctly. So even if the needle and jet were worn, it's not moving at the moment. So I should be able to find a place where it works correctly. So I'm not sure what to do next. You can get replacement carbs. not original ones. You could probably get original ones actually, but you can get the Chinese copy ones, and apparently they do work fine according to the forums. Don't know how much trust you could put in those, but again, they're like dirt cheap, so it might be worth trying. But yeah, I at least have to take the float bowl off that other one and see what's happening there, which means now I have to undo my nut and bolt, which wasn't easy to get to because of course it's the one on the most inside of the engine. If it was this one, it would be easy, but no, of course not. It's the hard one. Oh, almost. That's the other thing it does, is when it doesn't fire, it'll fire that first kick, and then after that there'll be nothing. So I don't know what that means. Shouldn't need choke. It is warmed up because I've burnt my hand on it quite a number of times already this morning. Yeah, that fuel leak's getting worse, so I should probably stop before it catches on fire. So again, at the moment I've been able to get it to the point where it'll start up and it'll idle but around 3000 RPM, and as soon as you try to adjust these, it'll die. The adjustment is super critical, and I think it's at that point where it's just cracking open the slide. So yeah, I'm really not sure what to do. What I really need to do is get all of these moved out of the way, get the Riley off the lift, get the MG on the lift so I can do an oil change on it, because it is now due for its warrant and registration. I can't get the registration until I've got the warrant. The good thing is on that car, because it's now over 40 years old, they've finally changed the rules, which means I only need a warrant on it every year, not every 6 months, which is great. And then we want to get back on the Riley. So I don't know. Take the carbs off, go through them again, change all the jets and things. I think I can do that because I've got all the parts here to do that. And then maybe order some of these replacement carbs. The only difficult thing then is I'll have to do something with the choke levers, because these carbs, they have a little linkage that goes, there's a little sort of, it's a metal strap basically that goes between the carb butterfly on this side and the carb butterfly on that side. So if I fit generic carbs on it, somehow I have to link those two together. Either that, or when you use the choke you have to move two levers. Don't know. The other thing that worried me was when I first started it up this morning, there was quite a bit of smoke coming from the right hand side. I'm really worried that with all my fiddling to try and get it to idle correctly, I'm not bedding in the rings properly, and it's going to glaze the bores. I guess if that ends up being a problem, you just take it apart and you re-bore them once you know your carbs are working, I suppose, or re-hone it. But after a bit of playing around, the smoke cleared up, so it may have just been oil that's been sitting there overnight. So I am careful to blip the thing. I looked up what the recommended behavior is, and you're not supposed to let it idle. You are supposed to give it a bit of pressure to get the rings to, I guess the rings then push out and bed in properly. But I can't get it to idle anyway, so yeah, it's all a bit tricky. The other good thing is it's not leaking any oil whatsoever from the actual engine. There's a single drip off the drain plug, but I think that's because I forgot to actually replace the drain plug washer when I cleaned everything up. But I'm going to be doing an oil change once I get this running and I've got a little bit of mileage on it. You know, I mean a couple of kilometers, like not much, just enough to get it bedded in. I'm going to change the oil because I've got different oil. I've got the correct oil in there, but when I assembled everything, I didn't use the correct oil. I just used normal motor oil and assembly lube. So all of that will be getting diluted into the oil. So I'll give it a good oil change at some point. But I think that that leak is now way worse. I suspect the little O-ring has popped out of place. So I'm going to take the carbs off, have a look at them. Maybe onto something. So I took the carbs apart. I changed the don't know why it's doing that. It takes a while to settle down. That is where the idle's supposed to be. It's gonna die. Ugh. So it is better, but it's still behaving the same. What I ended up doing, I figured out it was leaking was because the gasket was pinched. You can see there. So that's no good. I changed the jets over. But I don't really think that'll make a difference to the idle, but since I was in there, I swapped these over. And I discovered that the replacement things are different. They won't actually fit. But because I replaced the jets, I did replace the needles. I can always put the old ones back. That's easy enough. But I thought, yeah, let's just change the jets and needles so they're both the same, which seems good. I went through all the little passages again with the carb cleaner, or the brake cleaner rather, made sure they were absolutely clean, no problems there. I did pull out one piece that I hadn't pulled out before. There's another little brass insert that you can pull out, and I checked that all of the passages in that were clean. Let's see if it's leaking. No, I think that's fixed the leak. So I've set the screws so they're only just open. I have the mixture screwed to 1 1/4 turns, which is what the manual says, and it does seem a little bit better, but it's still weird. Let's see if it'll start. Sure, it's not a fueling problem. So when you flip it, it stays high. And then slowly over time it drops. I have no idea what would cause that. So what would cause that behavior? Nothing sticking, the slides go up and down fine. I'm sure it's not running out of fuel. The bowls are set to the correct rate. This is the simplest fuel feed you can get. It's going straight into the carbs pretty much. There is that filter there, but I don't think that's going to cause any issues. It's a good thing I've got that filter there. It's already picked up a bit of muck, which is out of my tin. yeah, I don't understand what would be causing it. You know, it's not like SU carbs where the piston goes up and down depending on the engine vacuum. These aren't like that. They're just straight obstruction in the throat. They go up and down. These are a little loose, I noticed. I don't know if that could be causing a bit of a leak, and that's with these screws done up tight. So could that be a problem? But again, if I spray carb clean around, it isn't causing an issue. I don't get any sudden increase. I don't think these would be causing any sort of huge vacuum leak, but maybe I'll plug those up and try it again without those. But yeah, that behavior where the revs go up and then they don't drop down. I don't quite understand that. And the other reason I don't think it's a fuel issue is because normally what I've seen when you run out of fuel like that, the engine starts speeding up as it gets leaner, and then it'll conk out. But it's not doing that. It's like the revs are just doing strange things. These little rubber boots are on. So it's getting closer, but yeah, it's just not right. It's not the gauges. If you lock those off completely, it makes no difference. I had another thought, which is a problem I actually had on the Valicette that gave me similar symptoms. Also the real difficulty in trying to start. And that was that the advance unit on this was sticking. I wonder if the same could be happening on this. And it's advancing too much, which would explain why sometimes it's hard for me to seem to start it, although it's not backfiring. And you know, maybe if the timing advance isn't free, could that explain why it slowly works its way back? I don't really know, but I can have a look at that. I've got the static timing set to where it should be, but I might stick a timing light on it and see what the actual advance is doing. I honestly don't know what to do next. I've taken the carbs off again, and I took off the little couplers. There's an O-ring under here. I made absolutely certain the O-ring was seated properly. I did what they say in the book. I used some grease to stick it in place and made sure it all went together properly. I've sprayed, testing for leaks again, all around the carbs, all around those seams. And it does seem a little bit better, but still, I just can't get it to run right at all. Let's see if it'll... The ignition switch is getting worse. Sometimes if you give it choke, it'll start again. But the revs sit up high. And then it just starts dying off. If you give it a blip on the throttle, it jumps back up again and it keeps going. I did wonder if it was with the new pistons and rings, is there more resistance or something? But no, that it turns over really easily. You know, you can turn it over on the spanner, no problem. So I don't think it's like it's binding up or anything. I honestly don't know. The only thing I can think of is that these carbs are just worn out. Which I don't know. It's done 62,000 kilometers. Is that possible? Yeah, I really don't know. let's see, things people have suggested. I'm sure it's not flooding. I have checked that. The plugs, when I've pulled them out before, don't look wet. Pretty sure it's not an air leak, although the symptoms, I think, are as if there's a vacuum leak somewhere. But I've checked all of that and double checked it and gone through and made sure everything is tight, and spraying the ether around, I can't detect any sort of leak anywhere. These are on tight. I've even tried swapping the slides around just to see if that would make any difference whatsoever, and it didn't. Fuel level is correct. I could recheck that. All the jets and everything are cleaned out. I checked that. The ignition is correct. I checked that. I had to replace some of the screws because these were the screws that held that plate on, and somebody's already replaced them. I think that one is actually a posi drive one, which explains why the head's stripped. So I've just put in some new screws in there. They're not JIS, unfortunately. They're hard for me to get, but maybe one day. I've definitely fixed the carburetor leak, so that's good. That's all dry. These aren't leaking. Don't know. No idea. Pretty sure the valve timing is correct and the ignition timing is correct. I did try the meter on it, the strobe on it, and the advanced retard unit isn't getting stuck at all. That's nice and free. It's advancing correctly. Static timing is set correctly. It's just something to do with the carburetors. I don't think it's to do with the length of the fuel hose or anything like that. That was another suggestion. Just because it seems to do the same, you know, even with this simple thing. So it's not like it's air locking or starving of fuel. Yeah, I'm sure the adjustment on the slides there is just far too sensitive. Like, you know, they talk about quarter of a turn, but you move it like a 16th of a turn, and that's enough to make it die. So I think it's sitting right on that edge. I've tried playing with the mixture screws. I've set them to the correct thing, which is 1 1/4 turns. Maybe I should just try some really radical settings, you know, turn it out 3 turns and see what it does. But yeah, it's maybe worth a try. Maybe it's just way too lean. I really don't know. But what to do next? I might go chip some garden waste just to go and do something else for a little while. Took a break. We did some chipping, so I've cleaned up the driveway, which is good, except now all the crap's blowing in here. And I went through everything once again. One thing I did discover is my mixture needles were not all the way in, because I'd fitted new O-rings into them. It says to do them up until they seat, so I was being really careful, you know, not to do them up too tight, but I wasn't doing them up tight enough. So I fixed that, wound them all the way in, so I know they're seating, and wound them back the 1 1/4 turns, and I still pretty much have the same problem. Of course, it never starts when you want to show it running. Ooh, petrol everywhere. weird. It'll rev fine, so you can give it throttle and it'll rev, but then it comes back slowly. The slides are definitely not getting stuck, I know that. Yeah, I honestly can't think of anything else to try at the moment, apart from maybe new carburetors. But I think maybe one thing I'll do is take the valve cover off and just check the valve timing, just make sure none of that's moved. Because I have had that happen before. That happened to me in the Riley, where the valve clearance had changed and one cylinder wasn't getting compression. But it isn't smoking anymore, that's good. There's been enough throttle blipping and running it, so I think those rings will bed in okay, mainly because I can't get it to idle. So I think, what's the time? It's nearly 5 o'clock. I'll have a look at the valve clearances, but then I think I'm going to pack up and leave it for a bit and have a think. Tried one last thing, which was taking off the air filters, just in case that was causing something, but no difference. It's just louder, yeah, quite a bit louder. So no, it's not that. Like I say, I'm really not sure what else to do at this point. So that's where we're leaving it tonight. Basically out of things I can think of to try. And I think I've hurt my back with all kick-starting. I've just pulled a muscle. So I'm going to leave it now and have a think. And again, if anyone's got any suggestions of other things to try, I'm all ears. But the only thing I can think of is the carbs are just worn out. Or just the slides do seem a bit loose down inside the things. Maybe everything's just worn out, because it is what, it's 1980, so 45 years old. There's probably no harm in trying the cheap Chinese carbs on it. I'll see if you can get the originals. I'm not sure if you can or not, or whether it's worth it, but I'll see what I can find. So a good weekend in the fact that I got it all up and running and going again, but not so good because I can't actually get it to run properly. The other thing I should do is check the front brake, actually. But yeah, that's all for this weekend.